Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will start the panel sessions. Each panel session will have one rapporteur. I will try to show them to you. I will be happy if during the sessions, all those inspired from the talks will tell me or our rapporteurs some ideas and recommendations for the follow-up of this conference. The first panel, we decided to talk about what are the fundamentals of artificial intelligence. Why we talk about artificial intelligence? Is it really new? I'm not sure exactly, as we are watching so many movies at home about Transformers, Iron Man, and all kinds of other robots around us. So for me, the topic is not new, but obviously there is something that we don't know about it. I'm very honored to invite Laurence Brooks, our moderator of the first panel. Laurence, I'll ask that you present our first panelists. I'll give you the floor, please. Welcome. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me over here to moderate this panel. As the Deputy Minister said, my name is Laurence Brooks. I'm a Professor of Technology and Social Responsibility in the UK. And the panelists that are going to talk about this topic of the fundamentals of AI and its impact on society, I'd like to invite Professor George Sharkov of the European Digital SME Alliance, Maria Ilieva from the Emerging Markets Digital Transformation Strategic Deals Lead from Microsoft Austria, and Professor George Guinea from Brunel University London. If you'd like to join me on the stage. Do you want to sit there?
Okay.
So this is an opportunity for us to consider some of the questions which people have already kind of posed, some of the points made by the speakers already, the two ministers, the Deputy Minister and the Commissioner, and maybe to put forward some of our own points as well. So I'm first going to invite each of the panel members to say a few words about their position and where they're coming from. So Maria, would you like to start, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. Добро утро на всички. Аз съм българка, но като част от панел на международен ще продължа на английски. So my name is Maria Ilieva. I'm Bulgarian. I'm proud to be Bulgarian. That's exactly like Martin why I'm here. I work for Microsoft, and I'm part of a corporate team which is actually working with most digitally advanced or willing to advance customers in the world. And for me, it's a pleasure to be here and to share with you what are our ideas about AI.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me here. My name is George Gigan. I'm from Brunel University in London. I guess we're all excited about artificial intelligence. My particular take on artificial intelligence is that there are a lot of phenomena which are understood in the non-digital world, in the real world, and our biggest fault that we have is that we assume that those phenomena will seamlessly translate to the digital world, and this is not the case. Artificial intelligence, I think, is a great tool for bringing us there. On the other hand, we must also understand that artificial intelligence is not a panacea. We are all very enthusiastic about it, and perhaps with good reason for being so. However, we have also to have a lot of joined-up thinking on the one hand, and on the other hand, we have to look about how artificial intelligence can scale, because if we do not scale it up properly, and we not have the appropriate ecosystem, not just for startups and not just for conducting high-quality research, then it will inevitably lead to a fragmented approach, which perhaps might not be sustainable or as sustainable as we would like it to be currently.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Sharkov.
Hello. Well, it's a long story. I'll make it short, actually. So 80s, 90s, I was dealing with artificial AI research here in Bulgaria in the Academy of Science. And that was my PhD as well in expo systems in the biophysics and a postdoc in genetics. With many experience, well, long experience with the software and IT industry after that. Last 15 years, I'm a director or managing European Software Institute, a branch for Eastern Europe, with the Cyber Security Lab since 2 or 3 years here in the Sofia Tech Park. Last 4 years, I was National Cybersecurity Coordinator for the Bulgarian government. So you can imagine that my interest is cyber and AI, AI and cyber. I will elaborate on that later on, but also I'm proud to be a member of this high-level expert group with the European Commission, which Commissioner Maria Gabriel mentioned. Since last year, so one of these 52 people that are creating, and I will share part of these ethics guidelines, trustworthy AI, and so on later on. Thank you.
Thank you. I should say also that my perspective is that I'm also interested in the ethics of the artificial intelligence. In the same way that was mentioned by the two ministers, and working on a project funded by the European Union called Shaping the Ethical Dimensions of Smart Information Systems, or Sherpa. So I declare a vested interest in the kind of ethical side there as well. Maria, I think you had a few points you wanted to make about AI and society at the moment, where we stand at the moment. Would you like to talk to the audience about that, please?
Yeah, what I would like to talk to you about is that there are several surveys that actually people are afraid of AI. There was a survey indicated that around 37% of the people are afraid that they will be losing their jobs. And that's, honestly speaking, it's true for many professions like the call centers, cashiers. They are already exposed because this is where AI is really advancing very fast. In the beginning, I was skeptical about AI myself, exactly because of the ethics part and exactly about of our ability to really go and identify new jobs, as Minister of Education and Employment said. And this is where we have to focus, because from my perspective, the currency of the future is skills. This is what we need to focus on. This is where we have to go. We have to skill, reskill, hire the right people. What I want to talk about, the impact of AI on society, is actually to mention a program that I'm extremely proud Microsoft launched. This is AI for Good. It's a 5-year program with investment of 115 million, and it goes in 3 pillars. And this is why I actually became passionate of AI, because one of these pillars is helping the people who are less fortunate than us to have a better life. And just to give you an example, there is an application, Seeing AI, which is now downloaded by 5 million people in 36 countries, and it drastically helps the way how are able to see the world in a better way. The other part of the program is AI for Earth. I'm extremely proud that Bulgaria is part of this program as well. And this is a program which actually is looking in the future and is trying to protect the climate that we successfully ruined over the last decades. This is a program where basically we are trying to help the health of the people. So there is a very interesting projects going on in one of the countries that I'm supporting, European Union member. It's a genomics project where basically other countries now are joining, and the idea is to identify the trends for lung cancer, and together with pharmaceuticals companies to try to prevent and solve it. And all this can only happen with the help of artificial intelligence, because the question is that you need the big data and you need to put the algorithms and the analytics on top of it in order to be able to get some meaningful results. And the third part of this AI for good, which really touched my heart, is the part of humanitarian aid, that we are absolutely focusing on preventing the disasters to happen, the big storms, or if they unfortunately happen, we are helping how to be solved and people to become back to normal life.
Thank you. So you've raised a number of really interesting questions there. I think the first one that I would like to tackle, and I'd like the other panel members to come into, is there has often been, when there have been developments, especially technological developments, for going as far back as the Industrial Revolution, that every new technology is going to cause these huge disruptions and people are going to lose their jobs. But each time, society has managed to find a way to kind of fill in those gaps. Do we think that AI is going to be any different from those previous innovations? Is it special in some way?
It's difficult to stick out my neck and reply to that question. What I am concerned about is that the headline grabber is our job losses. Yes. AI is going to result in whatever percentage of job losses. And that may well be the case, and various organizations around the world, there's a political will, to tackle that problem. What I am sort of concerned about is that other impacts of AI beyond job losses are somehow perhaps getting swept aside in this. Now, I know of very little good AI approaches which are computationally cheap. What people tend to ignore is that AI, good algorithms are on the broad computationally expensive. And in order to provide good AI, you need a computational infrastructure in order to do it. Not only computational infrastructure, you need a communication infrastructure to do it. So you need 5G, you need a tactile internet, you need high quality power generation, okay? So there is a lot of cost beyond the headline grabbing job losses, and I think it's setting a big swept aside in that. So that, I think, for me, is particularly worrying. Not that job losses shouldn't be a headline grabber, but we have to educate Europeans about AI. We have to show them that it will lead to better life outcomes, a better quality of life. There's no doubt about that. However, we shouldn't, in our rush in that direction, we shouldn't marginalize what I think are other equally important concerns that AI will have on our society, certainly in the medium term.
Thank you. Professor Sharkov, do you have a comment to make on that as well?
Well, my story will be a bit longer, if you allow me. I have a couple of slides, actually, because, as you know, picture worth thousands of words. And if you can start the presentation there. Yes. First of all, to make this basic point, I want to refer back to the work of the AI high-level expert group at the European Commission. Started the work last June. Actually, we delivered the first draft of as you heard from the Commissioner, the first draft of ethics guidelines in December, and the final version will be on the 9th of April, presented to the Commission. That is, this is our deliverable there, the first deliverable actually, but the point is that around the group and the work, there was more than 2,000 members subscribed in the AI Alliance at Europe, and I would encourage you to join that, because this is the discussion panel where the final document will be published, still the draft is there, and where some definition of AI is given. And the most important is where we go with the investment policy or the development in Europe to be competitive and in all these directions. Now, I wanted to stress on the term trustworthy. This is actually a goal or a dream that we want to achieve. First of all, also a comment about the AI and technology, because you ask about that, this like disruptive technology and so on. It's just to make it clear that for me, and I think for people that understand properly AI, I would say AI is not a technology, for sure. And it has never been a technology, it has always been a dream.
Yeah.
Because since the very early ages of the computers, people wanted to make the thinking machine.
Yes.
Thinking like what? Like human. Maybe show the next slide, please. And I just want to remind you the first ever definition, actually, of the term AI that was given by John McCarthy. This is the author of Lisp and many other, the early days of the AI research back in 60s. So 1955, he defined, for the first time, he coined the term artificial intelligence. And his very simple definition that we used to forget is, what is the long-term goal of AI? Is just human level of AI. That's all. And for him, the solution, and we should not forget that, the solution or the way to achieve that is that human level of AI is logical AI based on the formalizing of common sense knowledge and reasoning in mathematical logic. So there is a stronger fundament. We don't speak about technology there.
Yes.
Okay. And it's a strong fundament, and we should not forget that AI is based in the fundamental research or theories in many areas. Of course, we start with the mathematical logic, but the modern logic, I mean, non-monotonic reasoning and other things, fuzzy logic and that stuff, how we present, because we need to use these abstraction models and so on. So this is part of what I saw at Martin's slide, the subjects that we have to study at the university, because AI is not programming.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we will need programming at a certain moment, but what kind of programming? So it's not about programming languages only, because somehow we have to make it run in the computers, of course, and on which computers we will see. But it's what the real thinking part of the AI is the one we call knowledge-based reasoning. So somehow we have knowledge inside, so somebody's putting this knowledge. So the developers, we create the formalism and the tool, how you put the knowledge inside, but who is entering the knowledge, the experts from the domain. So we have, going to the education area then, we need to have the fundamentals of AI for the developers and the tools and techniques, of course, many techniques that we do. This is for the professionals that create AI in a way. But also we have to do those that use AI to create business and services. So those are the other professionals that they use in the social life, in the services and everywhere, in cars, manufacturing and so on. So they should know majority of these fundamentals. They don't need to prove logical theorems, but they need to know that there is such a theory behind that. And they should know what is it about. Because it's not really a machine that works. Going back to the, to the ethics guidelines, we have these three major areas. So when we say trustworthy AI, this is the lawful AI. So this is the legal system, policy, and everything that maybe comes last. But the second part, this is the ethically adherent AI. What is the ethics of AI? So what are the principles? And there we defined a lot of things that should be implemented, or that's recommended in the third area, which is the technically robust AI. So some of these principles should be implemented there. And this here we talk about the transparency. Here we talk about the reproducibility, about the auditability or audibility or whatever. No, okay. And then this is the way to build the trust. So here we have the dilemma, because while discussing this part, we are saying, okay, there was even a sentence given by some of the members of the group saying, okay, the AI, well, this reproducibility, based on the same input data, should produce the same results. This is fundamentally wrong. AI is exactly producing different results. First of all, it doesn't work with the data. It works with a huge variety of the context, the AI. Yes. This is thinking machine. So it can never produce the same result. It's not 2 + 2 = 4 sometimes, okay. And so we changed that. We said, okay, well, given similar conditions, it should have similar behavior. And this is what we talk. We talk about behavior then. So these are the ethical principles that will guide the design of the system then, when we go, what kind of technology used for what, and so on. Then we cover different aspects and examples, like which are challenging the system, including the first part, the legal part, and it was mentioned already about these autonomous cars. So why don't we have autonomous cars on the streets in Europe? Because they are not allowed, you would say. Where do they drive? Don't we have European companies producing autonomous cars? No, we have. BMW, Volkswagen, all the others, they do have their research centers, they have the cars in the polygon. Where do they drive on the street? Well, they drive in the States, in California, because people allow them. Okay, still on a highway only. Okay, but they drive there. So how do we build trust in AI? So we have to, because we use it, but sometimes we don't know we use it, but we have to allow it. We have to adopt this like any other technology, well, in a good sense, saying technology, or any other technological revolution that came in the past, starting from the steam engine and whatever. We have to start using that and build statistics, because the trust is also based on statistics, how you make statistics without using the things, and taking some risk, of course. We use it in medical services, in health, and all the other places. We use it in many areas of the security. We use AI already to guide satellites and all the other systems. The smart grid, we call it even smart power grid, because AI is ruling this grid. So the electrical power. Okay, the other challenge I had to the group was to remind the 3 laws of robotics from Isaac Asimov. Okay, some people were laughing, they say science fiction. No, it's not science fiction, it's a reality. But I reminded that not because of the logic which is there, but because of the several examples we have inside, and which we don't see actually in the science fiction movies. We see the action part, even the movie I, Robot. That was, it was emphasized on the action part, but actually there is a lot of deep logic which is inside, which made actually the robot, when we put, and this is connected to the work of the group, when we define the rules or the principles, how the machines, which machine should follow, they should not be contradictory by definition, and usually they are. Humans, we create rules, even laws that are contradictory inside, or contradictory to each other. Somehow we manage, as humans, we make a balance, we make a compromise. Under these conditions, okay, I follow these rules, but maybe I violate a little bit this one. And we don't go mad based on that. So, okay, there is a little discomfort, but we consciously or subconsciously, we take certain decisions in certain situations. So if we ask the machine, AI, to do that, in giving these principles, the machine will be in panic what to do. Because logically, this is contradictory. So we should not ask the machine following these logically contradictory rules. So what does it do? Explode, commit suicide, or something like that? So this is the world we are creating, actually, and we should be conscious about that. And also to remind you, the last scene of this movie, I, Robot, tell me about this friendship thing you speak of. So will machines, AI, will they have emotions like? Well, we are not talking about consciousness, because that's another thing, but maybe they have emotions like, or something.
I mean, some people have gone even further than that and talked about, in terms of the technology, whether there is this concept of digital personhood, and whether the machines, therefore, should be seen as more than just a technology and should have rights and responsibilities within society. Well,
in this area, I do have several definitions of AI. So A from AI, I was prepared about this question. Anyway. So the first definition is like, we can consider A as augmented intelligence. So this is intelligence that helps us augment our capabilities, help us think better, assist us in many areas. We have many systems that are like this, what we call smart systems. Okay. Then the second one is maybe the classical one. So this is automatic or autonomous things like robots or many intelligent devices that can work without us. Usually the first group extends our capability, the second group would replace us in some places, dangerous places or other stuff, going on Mars and somewhere else. And then the third one, which is the challenging one, is another intelligence. This is intelligence we don't know yet. So this is a combination of the thinking components or reasoning components or different AIs that they talk to each other and they create this new creature. So we don't know it yet. We don't have experience yet on that. Examples like this, good examples actually. We did a survey here for the governmental agency, how chatbots are used, for example, for public administration.
Yes.
And chatbots not as a psychotherapist, like it was at the very beginning, or a simulation, or to pass the Turing test, but chatbots like intelligent assistants. And it was proven in a country which is very conservative about that, well, considered like Germany. So they proved that the intelligent assistant or chatbot giving, for the public administration, giving the services to the citizens, has a huge advantage compared to the human operators, because it's a very passionate, it answers all the questions, it can stand the cursing or the other language, and it doesn't have emotions. But the most important, the robot, the chatbot, generated, because it's analyzing type of questions, and it generates the new cases or the new interesting subjects or services that citizens are interested in. From the human operators compared to this, the same type of questions and service, there was a zero input on that.
But I think this raises a really interesting point. So you mentioned about a specific context there, which is Germany. And someone said to me, do we need to look at artificial intelligence from a European context in terms of the different countries and the different cultures? So for example, and forgive me for stereotyping, but maybe in Italy, having a more kind of more objective chatbot would not be such a good thing. The Italians might want one which is more emotive. I have an Italian colleague over there who's laughing at this. But I don't know. And again, in Bulgaria, would there be a different want, a different need, a different kind of requirement for that sort of intelligent agent? I don't know, as a Bulgarian, would you care to comment on this?
I don't know, as a Bulgarian, we like talking, so talking to chatbot we like as well. Okay. Whoever can listen to us, it's good. I just want to contribute to what Professor Sharkov said, that actually this morning I was reading the news from Latvia, and Latvia is the first European country which actually launched digital artificial intelligent news anchor in the biggest digital area. And actually it's a very interesting project, because it will do the same. It's not only the chatbots, but now the news will be made in a way how the people who observe the news want to see them. So it's really going in this direction, and I think that we have to learn a lot of things as Europeans from each others.
Sorry, did you want to carry
on? I just wanted to add one thing I mentioned at the very beginning. And this is our particular interest, especially the group I do some research with. And that's about the security of AI, or cyber for AI. How do we protect the artificial intelligence? Because the other part, like AI for cyber, it's already in practice. We do have. So the most modern in severe attacks towards the industry objects like SCADA systems and so on, they are done by AI, based on machine learning techniques. So they design these very complex attacks against the bad guys. Design these complex attacks against the complex industrial systems, ICS, SCADA systems. So how, and now the question is how we can counterfight such attacks? Well, definitely if an attack is performed, designed and performed by AI, using these techniques, the only way to resist or first to detect is to use AI. That's the only way. Humans cannot detect that. We cannot see that. We cannot react. So in this case, now we touch a little bit the subject of like autonomous weapons system, and there was also in this ethical group the discussion about the even moratorium or ban on all the AI research which could be used for weapons. But what is weapon definition? And I gave them this example. So you may remember 2 years ago, like the two terrorist attacks, one in Nice and another one in Berlin. Both were performed by trucks. The terrorists, they used trucks, stolen trucks, heavy trucks. In Nice, I think there were like 100 casualties there. because they drove through the crowd. In Berlin, it was a Christmas market. They drove through he drove through the crowd. Yeah. The difference was that in Berlin, he managed to kill no more than 20 people. Why? Because he used or he rented the wrong truck. It was a pretty modern truck, Scania or whatever, which has this blocking system. This is kind of AI safety system. It blocks at the moment that you hit some obstacle, whatever, the first hit, the truck will block automatically, whatever the driver does. So the terrorist in this case just escaped. Well, managed to escape, unfortunately. Yeah. But, so this is already the AI used in the safety systems. So this is another area very applicable to AI, because the AI can detect kind of differences in the behavior of complex systems, and this way to react. And this is the slide with the good bots and bad bots. So as I said, good bots we use, well, it's part of AI stuff that is considered, crawling or whatever, but the bad bots are used for this stuff as well. Yes. So we have to use good bots, of course, for something. And these are the other good bots that I use, the little robots we have. That was like 4 years ago. I was practicing to become a grandfather with this. And now my granddaughter, she's 4 years old, is playing with them. Yeah. Okay? But still need a little bit me to program them. So this is the way we go in life, in reality. Maybe last challenge, and this is this picture. I would like to ask you what it is. You say a modern art. No, this is something that illustrates the power of AI in scientific research. That was part of the dream, like 60s, to use it for scientific research. You know that everybody is now in a rush to develop the quantum computer and something like that. So there are like 5, 6 already kind of prototypes and big companies doing that. The disadvantage and then the claim is that this will be only used because they're like room-sized computers in a very special condition, cool condition, and so on, because superconductivity cannot be achieved at the room temperature. So last year, actually, this big group, what you see down there, like from several universities, they managed to create, based on machine learning technique, and one of the 2 hypotheses, how this superconductivity could be achieved at the room temperature, which will make the path open the pathway to develop quantum computer that can run in my pocket, not in special conditions. And this is the picture that was creating this, the hypothesis about this, the gap and whatever in elementary particles. So I think this is another area, AI for scientific research. I would remind you, like 60s, I think the general problem solver, yes. The first theorems, like 60, 70 theorems, were proven by the computer. Well, I think we left it in the past because, but it's still option in the future that comes back. Okay.
So I'd like to come back to the point you make there about, you were talking about the terrorist using the wrong sort of truck. There is a counterpoint to that where people are concerned and worried about the surveillance society that we live in. And so, for example, in the UK, there's now a proposal that cars using their GPS would be automatically limited to their speed restrictions around schools and areas like that. But equally, people have said, but I don't want a technology to tell me what to do. So do we think, what does the panel think about this idea that people are concerned about the development of this as a surveillance society, about technology being in the driving seat as opposed to the humans? Whilst it can be beneficial in some areas, in other areas people might almost kind of object and kind of try to do things against that. George, what do you think about this? I mean, do you think technology is there to control us, or are we in control of technology?
I think there has to be education. It's difficult for there to be a top-down approach to this solution. I think we have to get a debate going, and we have to try to build consensus. Because a top-down approach rarely works, in my opinion, and also a purely technological-driven approach, saying technology is right, just accept it, also is very counterproductive. So we have to educate people about the benefits of this, the safety of this, as well as the associated pitfalls, that your behavior will in some instances be monitored. Now, as a total side issue, one of my main worries about AI is, of course, now the miniaturization of sensors. Now, any surface appropriately endowed with sensors can become a platform for sensors collecting data on us. Those sensors are naked to the eye. Okay, and of course those sensors can transmit data on 5G networks or 4G networks about us. Yes. And again, this pervasiveness, ubiquity, and invisibility, yes, yeah. It's pervasive, it fades into the background, literally. That to me is highly worrying. Okay, and we sort of look at robots as the poster boys or girls of AIs, but we forget that, look, those are not the only highly effective tools which AI can be used for bad things, and technology is only as good as the hands in which the person is using it for. So I think it's a holistic picture. It's not just a very one-dimensional aspect to it, and it's not a simple endeavor, I'm afraid.
I mean, I think in the short video that introduced this whole session, Microsoft was sort of making a similar sort of point about it's the painter, it's the hand of the artist that paints the painting. It's not the technology itself. I don't know, do you think Microsoft has a particular view on this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's we are one of the founders of the Partners on AI, which is more than 80 organizations now. 50% of them actually are non-governmental organizations, academia, and we are very concerned of how AI will develop so quickly, because actually the statistic is saying that currently only 13% of the enterprises are reportedly using AI, but by 2020, 81%, this is a Gartner statistics, will be using AI.
Of course, that's now next year. It's not in the future,
so
it is next
year. There is a boom which is actually happening as we speak here in this room, and how we will really take care of everything which was set up to now very quickly. This is of a major concern for all the companies. Each and every company which is building the technology has their set of rules and principles, and they're not very much different. Okay, in Microsoft we have 6, Google have 5, but all of them are one and the same. And actually, I'm really looking forward for the academia, for the scientific environment to really help us do it right, because I just can give you another example on these cars things, that actually there was a test of autonomous car in a difficult situation, whether it has to crash and kill the driver or it has to crash and kill people.
Yes.
And actually it's a classic example of what we have to do. And guess what? One of the biggest car producers, they said immediately, no, I vote that the driver survives. Because, and they had a good justification from their perspective, having in mind they have to sell more cars, that basically they know the pattern of how the driver is driving, they know him very well, they know how he will react, they trust him, and this is the reason that in such situation they will basically teach the autonomous car to kill the pedestrian. So these are very, very important topics that we don't have answers yet, and it's real concern of how they will be resolved going forward.
So do we think that, for example, some of the ideas put forward are around kind of legislation and guidelines, and there have been a huge number of guidelines, especially around things like the ethics of AI and developing kind of practical AI ethics. Do we as a panel think that this is a good way forward? Do we think that there is going to be one set that's going to be able to encompass all of these issues?
Yeah.
I mean, well, Professor Sharkov, I think you've been working with...
Definitely. I think we have deficit in legislation and even regulations, I would say, for many years around ICT systems in general, software. We know that there is no insurance for failure of computer systems. Everybody is doing that.
Yeah.
There is no insurance of that. So there is kind of risk assessment. So we have this GDPR and all the other stuff that are very sound legal basis, but this doesn't make automatically the computer systems safe or secure. So practically, part of the job that we do in the group and these ethical guidelines, definitely some of the guidelines or some of the recommendations will go back or up to the legislation basis, and which usually brings something like what we call red lines.
Yes.
So this is a big warning. So if we want to make the legislation system that will restrict the use of it, we will kill the innovation, we will kill the research in that area. So, okay. So this is very important, these red lines, not to be the bottom line of the legislation. Okay, that's my point.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's about developing things like ethical guidelines, which don't necessarily, as you said, stop the innovation, but just make people consider what are the implications of these innovations that they're developing. And in the same way, I'm sure we're going to go on and discuss how AI is being taught and used within education. It's about educating these young people, the students, the AI developers and users of the future, about understanding what the implications are of those technologies. I'd like to conclude by thanking very much for our panel, for Maria, for George and George. Thank you for the very interesting discussion. And I'll hand back over to the Minister.
Laurence, thank you very much for this very introductory panel. It's very important. I would like to encourage all the participants today, please talk to our panelists in the coffee break, discuss and exchange ideas. It's very important to keep contact and to involve more in networking. Dear friends, I know that coffee break is now in the program, but please allow me to have now a special attention and to invite Mr. Tuomi from Finland. He's a chief scientist, innovator, inspirator to share with us his thoughts as we were a little bit late with the program and Mr. Tuomi should catch a flight and afterwards we have 15 minutes break. Ilka, I'll give you the floor. I will just mention that we are in your hands to listen your inspiration talk, but also you are from Finland. We are looking forward to the Finnish presidency in the second half of this year, so I would hope to scale up and to work together. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I was hoping to join the panel and it would have been a very interesting discussion, but due to scheduling difficulties, we had to improvise. So I'm improvising, and that's how it goes nowadays. My focus is on learning. And partly now I'm looking at this question from the point of view of transformation of education and the future of learning. So last year I did a study for the European Commission on the impact of artificial intelligence on learning, teaching and education. And today I'm working with specifically primary, secondary education and how artificial intelligence should be taken into use in those contexts. So, so this is a very specific kind of educational point of view. The reason why all this becomes very important, I mean, I almost had the feeling that I simply have to add some nuances and some detail to Minister Bartolo's, I think, extraordinary, insightful presentation. I really liked it, so I don't have the opportunity to thank you, but I will do it now. So, I mean, looking at the big picture, I think that is the important thing. So, we did also have a very extremely good presentation by Professor Wechev, which was focusing on the competencies related to artificial intelligence development themselves. So this kind of ecosystem of technology and science development. That's part of the story of education in AI. But the bigger story is really about social transformation. And we have been hearing many comments on the potential impact of artificial intelligence on employment and the future of jobs and work. I think that is a very good starting point, because that makes us think that we have to rethink the education and its role. The current educational institutions are really optimized for industrial age society and economy. It is no kind of random event that Sofia University is 130 years. We started to have these higher level systems for education institutions and public schooling as a reaction to the societal needs of the industrial age. That was technology played a huge role there. It is not an accident that we talk about industrial revolution. I would also like to highlight the point that it really was a revolution. We lost tens of millions of people and lives in that process. It was a social revolution. We forget it now easily because everything looks progress, looking back to the history. I would like to highlight the point that artificial intelligence allows us to talk about the emerging knowledge society in ways that help us think about the functions of learning, education, and technology in the future. But we cannot only look at the current systems of education, for instance, how artificial intelligence can be used to make current learning practices and teaching practices more efficient. For instance, automating the scoring of student responses as automatic assessment, automatic generation of test patterns, and so forth. We have to ask this question in a broader context, which is really about a different type of world where we are going. Knowledge will play a big role there, and skills. But in this context, I would still want to say one point about this transformation. Artificial intelligence is not, in my view, really the core issue here. We have had this transformation going on for a longer time, since the roughly early 90s. This is the kind of digital transformation where several different technologies are coming together and making new things possible. So communication technology, global networks allow us to create global systems of production, whereby clicking on a screen here, we spawn global networks of production that extend to, from Bahamas to China to Switzerland to India, and we do this in a millisecond kind of time scale, which means that we are seeing a kind of globalization that was never there before. This is a different type of thing. Partly because of this dynamic, we have to put software in this system. There is no time for humans to intervene in this kind of global systems of production that we are creating. We have been creating those already for 20 years. Artificial intelligence now comes in as a critical new piece that allows new types of automation in this global system. And on the other hand, artificial intelligence itself is enabled by exactly the same infrastructural kind of developments. So artificial intelligence in many ways, I was doing neural networks in my first degree is in theoretical physics. I was doing statistical physics of neural networks in the 80s. Then I went to do knowledge-based systems in Nokia Research Center in late 1980s. I wrote a book on artificial intelligence in 1980s. Then at Nokia, I was heading the knowledge creation, knowledge management group. Actually, I set it up because I thought that machines are not the answer. Actually, it's about humans communicating with each other and learning collectively. So looking at the kind of innovation systems within these kinds of global corporations, I was saying that actually we need to have computer support for communication, sense-making, meaning creation, knowledge creation, and technology comes in there. So my second degree is in adult education, partly because of that. So we are talking about a bigger societal transformation. It will change the role of educational institutions. Specifically, it will change the motivation, the social legitimization of universities. And this is a very interesting opportunity for us to think, how would a university look like in the future? What kinds of structures? We have been talking about lifelong learning here. We have been talking about the kind of diffusion of the boundaries between work-life learning, at school and at institutions learning, and we are blurring many of these boundaries. So the whole system is in a process of transformation. AI is part of that story. So if we look, I was supposed to join the panel on skills and society. So the question of skills becomes interesting in this context. So when we talk about skills, often, companies have extensive, and Europe and other players are developing extensive catalogs of skills, which they try to use to manage competence development in the society and in companies and so forth. The concept of skill, if you look at it carefully, and the kind of catalogs of different types of skills, you start to see that actually they are, in a way, mirror images of our technical infrastructures that run the industrial systems of production. So many of the skills are actually something that people need to have to be able to link with machines. So we teach people to be able to become part of the machinery of the system. This happens to, many of the skills that we used to think are important are those types of skills. And they are relevant and important if we have this kind of mass production system where the industrial system actually works. We are moving from that type of value creation towards different types of value creation, where this concept of skill has to be rethought. So the first step would be to talk about competencies. So competencies is a bit more. It's knowledge with expertise, maybe with attitude. And combining these three things, you get competence. And I don't have too much time here to talk about this, but I simply say I would go beyond the concept of competence towards a concept of agency or capability. So asking the question how humans are able to make things happen in this kind of future world. So that's about agency. And then educational institutions are seen in the context of how they create these kinds of capabilities for humans to be able to live meaningful lives in this future world. So if you look then the AI competencies, what we need. I would suggest that we have to separate different types. I'm quickly borrowing from what I've been seeing in competence development in open source communities and software related areas. You have different types of levels of competence there. First, you are able to use a system. So that's what we do with computers very much. The second layer is you are able to modify these systems. You are able to take something that someone has developed, you kind of tinker, you are in the kind of maker kind of culture, you do something new using these existing resources. Then the third level is that you are able to design this, and this is what we talk about. These are the scientific cores then where you have the kind of leading design capabilities. On top of that, you have people who are capability of teaching these things. So teaching requires that you don't only know the stuff well, but you understand what the others know and are capable to learn. And you are able to kind of adjust that. Each of these levels requires very different types of competencies and skills. Just throwing this idea up because we don't have time to discuss it more. So one challenge I would like to close is simply if you look the kind of discussion that artificial intelligence is going to destroy jobs, then you have people saying that yes, but they will also be created. This is the politically correct view. I haven't seen good arguments why there would be, except that it always used to happen in the past. I think there's going to be major changes in the work life in the future. But one interesting thing is that if you look the expertise that currently is in artificial intelligence research, about 1 in 10 researchers in AI are women. And if it happens that many of the current kind of occupations will be modified or even replaced by these types of artificial intelligence systems, and if it's the case that the emerging new jobs are AI-intensive jobs, require data engineering, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that kind of stuff. If we have about 10% women in this area, the future job market does not look very attractive. So I think, for women. So I think we should also take these kinds of questions that, okay, how we actually get these people involved who will then build the world of the future. Sorry about this kind of improvised lecture, but I hope we can continue the discussion. It's definitely a very interesting area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilkka. Thank you, everybody, for the patience. Our next panel is with very inspiring people. My colleague Denica Sacheva will be moderating. We have Stefania from Italy. We have Kati from Finland, Todori Elomo from Sofia University. Just now I heard that Eva Meidel, our MEP, arrived. So I will encourage all of you, let's have 10, maximum 15 minutes break for refreshments, and very nice patisseries prepared from our professional school. And then let's come back on time after 10 minutes to have our next inspirational panel. Thank you very much. See you soon.